We hear a constant voice in our heads telling us to kill humans. But standing before you, I don't hear that voice.
Ah?
So that's what it meant. In that case, Jinwoo had a possible reason. When it talks about humans, it probably means hunters. Since the underground temple, thanks to the system, Jinwoo had become a player, so to be very precise. He was a little different from other awakened beings called hunters. That's why it thinks I'm not human. That made sense to Jinwoo. The boss saw that he understood and nodded. We don't need to fight. I don't want unnecessary fighting or loss on our side. The boss finally made it clear. Just hand over those humans behind you. Then, I will keep you safe. How does that sound? Jinwoo asked in return. Let me ask you something. Of course. Who are you? Where are you from? And why are you trying to kill humans? We are. The boss's face froze, smile and all. It didn't last long. The boss then relaxed its smile and spoke again. We don't need to fight. I don't want needless losses on our side. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. The boss had repeated the same lines, like some NPC in a game. Asked a question, it was unable to answer. Just hand over those humans behind you. I promise to keep you alive. The creature seemed calm and did not notice anything odd about its behavior. The ice slayers behind the boss also did not realize their leader was acting strangely. Since Jinwoo did not say anything, the boss gave him a nudge. Will you accept my offer? Jinwoo realized that trying to learn more about magic beasts was not worth his time. It was time to make a decision, and he had already made up his mind. No, Jinwoo said with a smile. I want your shadow so much that I cannot let you go. You need to defeat the boss and take their shadow. This was what Jinwoo had planned since he first saw the boss, and he wasn't going to change his mind. Are you trying to challenge me and my soldiers? He asked. There are more of us than you. Do you really think you can handle this by yourself? Jinwoo smiled. You think you have the only soldiers? Chugong called out dark shadowy figures from nowhere. These shadowy creatures appeared right behind him, startling everyone. Jinwoo's team let out a loud scream as they saw these shadowy beings suddenly appear. Chugong was so surprised that he stumbled backward and nearly fell over. Jinwoo felt sorry for his teammates, who looked really scared, but this was no time to panic. Everyone needed to stay calm and think clearly. There was no time to explain anything. Even in normal times, Jinwoo wouldn't tell them much. 29 shadow soldiers stood before him. Jinwoo faced his army and stared at the boss. Who's outnumbered now? He said. The boss growled. Nice trick. If you want to die, I will make that happen. The boss pulled out 2 daggers from its waist. Jinwoo had been waiting for this moment. He summoned Night Killer in his right hand and Kasuka's Venom Fang in his left. A party trick. The boss did have a point. Jinwoo had more soldiers, but they weren't strong enough to defeat the boss. The boss seemed confident because of this. Jinwoo knew he needed stronger help. He looked over at Chul, who was lying unconscious on the ground. Attack! The boss shouted, and the ice slayers pulled back their bows. Bears, Jinwoo commanded, moving the shadow beasts to the front. Shunk, 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 shunk. Arrows flew through the air, hitting the shadow beasts. They cried out in pain. Before the ice slayers could shoot more arrows, the soldiers charged forward, and the mages began casting their spells. Jinwoo's eyes burned with determination. You're going down. Chul's sword lay on the ground near Jinwoo's feet. He kicked it back to Chul and then ran away. His eyes focused on the ice slayer's leader, who waited for him. Sparks soon flew as Jinwoo's 4 daggers clashed with the boss. Clang, 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 clang. The shadow warriors fought the ice slayers too. My Unwan looked at Heejin. Shouldn't we help? She shook her head. There's nothing we can do here. On the battlefield were big monsters swinging their huge claws, shadowy soldiers who appeared again quickly, and powerful warriors with swords and bows. What could lower-ranked hunters like us do here? All they could do was pray. Heejin watched Jinwoo fight a long-haired ice slayer. Jinwoo cried out in pain. His opponent was clearly a powerful dungeon boss. The battle seemed even, but Jinwoo was getting hurt. Could he last 3 more minutes? His MP was running out fast because his soldiers had to keep regrouping. Then the mages finished their spell. Huge balls of fire, even bigger than volleyballs, fell onto the ice slayers. Boom! The power of the upgraded mages was amazing. The explosion was so loud, it woke Chul up. Chul lifted his head. Clang clang thud. With his blurry vision he saw scary ice slayers and black knights fighting each other. What is happening? He didn't know what was going on, but he knew why he was lying there. Someone hit him on the back of his head. That voice he heard behind him belonged to Jin Woo-sung. Now fully awake he felt angry and ashamed, and his hands were shaking. But he still reached for his sword. He was completely surrounded by ice warriors, and there was no way to escape. If that was true, I'll take him down with me. His angry eyes scanned the battlefield. And there Jinwoo was. He was fighting an ice slayer and not paying attention to what was behind him. This was Chul's chance. Chul quickly stood up and charged toward Jinwoo. Jinwoo felt Chul coming and smiled. If it's you, Jinwoo had expected this would happen. Chul swung his sword at Jinwoo's neck. Get out of here! Jinwoo yelled as the boss stood in front of him. And Chul came from behind. He called out, Igris. Instantly Igris jumped out from Jinwoo's shadow and blocked Chul's sword. Clang! Chul's angry eyes widened in shock. Before he could say a word, Igris thrust his sword deep into Chul's chest. Shunk. The blade went through his chest and came out the other side. Jinwoo stepped back quickly. He knew this was how Chul would react. Chul was someone who let his emotions control his actions. Although they hadn't talked much, Jinwoo already understood him. Chul frowned at Jinwoo. You, he said before taking his last breath. Igris stopped the boss while Jinwoo stood near Chul's shadow. Come out, he shouted. Then a loud scream echoed as a big hand came out of the shadow. Jinwoo successfully pulled out the shadow. That was awesome. He felt excited. The last puzzle piece had fallen into place during this boss raid. The Black Knight that appeared from his shadow was much stronger than Chul himself. He held a massive warhammer in one hand, and carried a shield as tall as an adult in the other. The shadow felt really dangerous. Chul was strong, but the shadow seemed even scarier. Even in the middle of all that, Jinwoo was amazed. Jinwoo thought about giving a name to something. Jinwoo glanced over at the ongoing fight. Chengris was struggling against the boss. He was only supposed to give Jinwoo more time by coming back to life. Sheish? The boss cut off one of Igris's arms. I don't have time for this. Name. It could be anything. Should he just use Chul Kim? Jinwoo shook his head. He didn't feel right naming the undead after a human. Right. Chul Kim. Chul in English means iron. That would be his name. Jinwoo had chosen a name for the new shadow soldier. Iron LV1 Knight rank. The same rank as Igris, but Jinwoo didn't have time to be happy. He gestured at the boss. Iron lumbered forward with his big frame. Stomp stomp stomp. Jinwoo thought Iron's size was cool but worried about how he would handle the boss's speed. His worries quickly faded though. Iron puffed out his chest and shouted loudly. Rao AHH. What was that? Jinwoo jumped at the sudden noise as a message popped up. Bang. Iron is using skill Epic Taunt. The master of the dungeon has entered a state of aggro. An aggro skill. Chul was an A-rank tank, so he had a high-level aggro skill. Iron, who was his shadow, could copy that skill perfectly. The boss spun around immediately, even though it could have ended Igris right there. The boss rushed at Iron as if possessed. Iron used the reinforcement skill to withstand the boss's dagger. Yes, Jinwoo nodded in approval. Meanwhile Igris's severed arm grew back. Whoom. Black smoke rose from the stump and formed a new arm. The boss kept focusing on Iron. Jinwoo and Igris worked together to attack the boss. Heejin was amazed by what she saw and could not say anything. Everything seemed very strange to her. She did not want to know more about what was happening. Beside her, Songi spoke softly. Heejin hesitated before answering. Yeah. Songi's voice shook with fear. Do all hunters' battles look like this? Heejin replied sadly. If they did, I wouldn't have gotten my hunter's license. My Onbiwan stared in confusion. Maybe we're just dreaming all of this. If this was a dream, it felt more like a nightmare. Heejin gasped. She watched as dark figures fought the magic beasts. At the same time, she began to worry about something. Once we get out of here, we'll have to tell the truth. What were they supposed to say? She couldn't even explain what had happened with Jinwoo inside the Red Gate. After she brought this up, Heejin struggled to speak. He was still on the ground, shaking in fear. Isn't it cool that we're worried about what happens next? All the team members nodded. They were in a super hard dungeon, with a red gate. It was a place they never thought they'd escape alive. But now they were concerned about what would happen after they left. It was all because of one person. Hee-jin looked at Jinwoo. She felt a mix of shock and gratitude, but mostly amazement toward him. Kasaka's venom fang struck the boss's shoulder. The boss's movement slowed down as its injuries piled up. Namjich. The smile on its face was long gone. The boss had been avoiding their attacks with ease until now, but was starting to get tired. Don't let up. Iron grabbed the boss tightly. Now, Jinwoo shouted. Igris and Jinwoo stepped back. The boss looked confused. The mage soldiers threw fireballs at Iron's position. Kaboom! Boom! Arg! The boss cried out in pain for the first time. It tried to move away, and Iron was badly hurt. Crack! The boss turned to Jinwoo with anger in its eyes. Grasa! Jinwoo was amazed again. Even though it was hurt so badly, it kept coming at them. After all, it was the master of a high-rank dungeon. Too bad for it. Things had already gone too far. Dagger throw Jinwoo through Night Killer just like he did before. But this time he added some extra force with Ruler's hand. Whoosh, the dagger flew through the air in a flash. If the boss realized it couldn't dodge the dagger in time, so it blocked it with its own weapon. Crack, because Night Killer was thrown so hard, the boss's dagger snapped on impact. At the same time, Jinwoo used stealth and dash to get closer and stabbed Kasaka's venom fang into the boss's stomach. Shunk. The boss's eyes widened in shock. Arg. Even after all this, it grabbed Jinwoo's wrist. It refused to give up. Ron Lob. The boss lifted its dagger above its head. Jinwoo grinned. A huge war hammer smashed into the boss's skull. Blam. Its head hit the snow on the forest floor. Iron raised his healed arms and slammed the hammer down again. Koom splat. Igris had been ready to attack, but instead put his sword away. Jinwoo sheathed his daggers. The messages appeared as expected. Ping. You have defeated the master of the dungeon. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. Phew. It's finally over. Jinwoo let out a sigh of relief. They had just won a tough battle, just as he was about to catch his breath. Iron caught his attention. Hey, stop right there. He quickly moved to halt Iron. The Shadow Warrior was about to swing his hammer again, but then stopped. He showed no mercy, just like he did when he went by Chul. The boss was completely destroyed. Luckily it didn't hurt the shadow. He smiled a little. The greatest prize from the tough fight was right beneath him. Jinwoo said softly. Arise. The time was already past 3 in the morning. The 4 leaders watching the red gate looked worried. Chul finally broke the silence. We'll stay here. So why don't you leave first, Mr. President? How could I go home while our guild members are still stuck in there? President Junhaufbeik said firmly. He couldn't leave them because of his honor as an active guild master and Senring hunter. Suddenly Sangman's eyes widened. Huh! The red gate. Kichul and Sung Chan also noticed something strange happening. The red gate is opening. Someone shouted. The dungeon's been cleared. Others exclaimed. People are coming out. President Baek tightened his grip. Excitedly. Was Chul Kim behind this? Everyone rushed toward the gate. Baek looked around eagerly for Chul, but he wasn't among those who came through the portal. He wondered what was going on. That's odd. Sung Chan trusted Chul just like he did. His look became more confused every second. Hunter Park, Hunter Ko and Hunter Yoon. Hunter Sung. Sangmin smiled big when he saw Jinwoo with Sunggi following the 3 white tiger hunters. I knew it. His smile was very different from the serious look on Sung Chan's face. But the smile quickly disappeared. The gate closed behind them and vanished. Kichul asked Jinwoo, only the 5 of you made it through. Jinwoo looked tired as he nodded. Yes. Kichul looked heartbroken. He couldn't believe what had happened. He wiped away tears as he marked off the names of those who didn't survive. Baek watched and shouted in shock. Only the weakest hunters made it. Only 1 B rank came back. That didn't make sense. What had happened inside that gate? Let's go. I'll take you home, Jinwoo said as he started to walk away with Songji. But then the president grabbed his arm. Wait a minute. Jinwoo quickly pulled his arm free. Baek stared at him sharply. Let's talk for a second. Jinwoo turned around. I'm tired now. If you have any questions, ask your guild members. Bebe couldn't keep it inside anymore, and finally said, "I am Yunho Baek, the leader of the White Tiger Guild." Jinwoo's eyes remained cold. And Jinwoo's cold response made Baek's eyes turn wild, like those of a magic beast. They looked completely feral. "We lost 9 guild members because of this incident. Don't I get to ask you a few questions as the guild president?" He wasn't asking. It was like an order or maybe even a threat. Baek wasn't gonna let Jinwoo leave without a fight. Jinwoo was clearly upset. He stood his ground even though Yunho Baek, an S-rank hunter, tried to intimidate him. "I just saved 3 of your people," Jinwoo said. "As president, shouldn't you thank me first?" Baek felt the weight of Jinwoo's anger. Everything Jinwoo said was true, so Baek couldn't argue. "I'm sorry," Yunho said. With a bow, Jinwoo turned and left. Songji glanced at Jinwoo's face as she followed him to avoid upsetting him further. They got into the van and drove away. Yunho was really confused. His mind was a mess, so he ran to Heejin, who was the only high-ranking hunter still alive. "Excuse me, Heejin." Heejin was drinking some tea that Kichul had brought for her. "What's going on with him? Why is he so upset?" They had run away from a red gate after facing huge challenges. Why was he acting so angry? Heejin shook her head to show she didn't know anything. "I don't know, sir," she said. After he beat the boss, he stood by the body and said something quietly 3 times. "He's been acting that way ever since, so he was fine until then." She looked at Myungwan and Kijong. They nodded at the same time. "What a strange guy he is," Yuno muttered to himself. As he looked at the alley Jinwoo had driven down, Sungmin started wringing his hands like it was all his fault. "I'm sorry, Mr. President. He was probably really tired. From what I've seen, he's not a bad person." "No, that's not the problem." "Excuse me." Yunho gave Sangmin a serious look. "Why haven't you recruited him yet?" "Sir." Sangmin tried to hide how nervous he felt. But Yunho was even more annoyed. The president gulped as he remembered Jinwoo's cold stare. He thought about how, if he fought Jinwoo, he might lose at least 1 arm. Maybe even more than that. Sangmin quickly figured out what Yunho meant, and answered. "I'm doing my best, sir." "Well, it's not good enough." Yunho's eyes shined. Jinwoo Sung, clearly manager, and had chosen someone else. "Use whatever resources you need. Make him a part of our guild at any cost." On his way home, the sound of a loud engine filled the air. Jinwoo let out a sigh. Unfortunately, he had failed to extract the Ice Slayer boss's shadow. Why did he struggle against the boss? Was it because the gap in their skills was just too wide? It was tough to accept, but there wasn't much he could do. He knew there would be many more strong bosses ahead, but what mattered most now was getting stronger to avoid missing chances like this in the future. Leveling up. That was what Jinwoo did best. He took his left hand off the wheel for a second, and a beautifully curved dagger appeared. It was called Barca's dagger, a weapon once used by a great warrior. The dagger had a special power that made it feel light, allowing Jinwoo to move more quickly and easily while holding it. It was a strong weapon too, giving him more power in battle. At least, he had not left without gaining something useful. One of the 2 daggers the boss had used. He got rid of the broken one, and kept this one. Barca's dagger, it was great for attacks and made him faster too. This dagger was better than his U-rank dagger, Kasuka's Venom Fang, and even the B-rank Night Killer, which he spent a lot of money on. Getting it was really tough, like an A-rank challenge. It was time to replace Kasuka's Venom Fang, since it wasn't as useful anymore. Jinwoo thought about what happened at the Red Gate, as they drove up to Songji's apartment building. The car stopped with a loud screech. Songji, who'd been so quiet, got out of the front passenger seat and bowed. "Have a safe drive." "Right." She turned around. Jinwoo saw how Songji's shoulders were bent, as she slowly walked toward the door and felt he had succeeded in convincing her. Even though things got complicated, his main goal was to persuade Songji. She no longer seemed interested in being a hunter. Jinwoo felt happy with himself as he got ready to start the van. Then something unexpected happened. The passenger door suddenly opened. Jinwoo looked over in surprise. Songji had come back and was holding the door open. He wondered what she was doing. He didn't have to wait long to find out. She bowed very politely again. "Thank you for everything, Jinwoo." Sometime while they were at the Red Gate, she'd stopped calling him Mr. "Yeah, sure. See you tomorrow." "Well, in a few hours." A few hours. He eventually realized what Songji meant, after she was out of sight. "Starting today." Jinwoo had to finish the rest of the raids with Jinyu. He would get to see her again because she was part of the team. That's what she had been talking about. He felt relieved. If Sonji had not wanted to leave home because of this, it would have caused big problems for his plans. Things worked out well. Now Jinwoo could clear Sai rank dungeons, even faster with the help of his shadow soldiers. Jinwoo felt sure he could finish the rest of the missions faster than anyone else. He also couldn't wait to see how Jinyu would react when he first saw the shadow soldiers. But it wouldn't be as funny as Chugong's reaction had been. Jinwoo laughed to himself as he walked around the corner. The next morning, Jinwoo yawned as he dragged himself downstairs to the lobby of his apartment building. He was still half asleep.